Breaking news. The tape never lies. Network breaking news.
Well, I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way.
I have determined that Caleb Williams is fucking awesome, baby! Psych!
For Lord Cars.
Hear ye, hear ye. Man to the people.
You know it's Cars Keys. Let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive. Blog boys drive away with our takes like car thieves. Break down, we study tape and thrive.
Analytical preparation, that's what cause is given. Cars don't discriminate, teaching the men and women. Each and every week, there's nerd to get your focus. Never manipulating stats, lore, cars no hocus pocus. Cars keys, they're never lost. Checking source, never gonna find a better scouting report. Cars going live with the smartest man, my bestie. Deciphering holes on the defense like Getsy. New show, uniforms, orange with the dark sea. Tape never lies, patrons, this is Cars
You know
Keys.
it's Cars Keys. Let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive. Blog boys drive away with our takes like car thieves. Break down, we study tape and thrive. We gotta break down tape like detectives. No hot takes, just real football perspectives. The Bears nerd dropping science on his terms. TTNL giving Bears press like a perm. Other networks is off with the heads. Stats plus film equals football cred. Analysis like Data Ted tries to shred. McCaskey's letting me cake, we keep the 100 crew fed. Cars Keys, let's get it started up. Give me the car keys. Lakeshore Drive. Blog boys drive away with our takes like car thieves. Break down, we study tape and thrive. Lord Hines in his car, fill up a goblet. Lord Hines in his car, fill up a goblet.
I love balls.
I'm sure you do. Cars Keys, Season 3, Episode 45. The bye week is over. The Bears are almost back. Heading to D.C. Getting ready to kick that fucking door in. But I'll let my guy tell you about that. Let's get him out here. Cars, you ready? You ready to go? I know I am. Let's get you. There he is.
How you doing? It's
Father of the
another-
year right there. He's teaching
I'm-
teaching those girls the right way.
her first phrase was, "Can I just come on and say Green Bay effing sucks?" And I was like,
Gotta say
"Yeah,
it the
we
right way.
can."
You gotta say it the right way, kid.
She's, one of them can't wait to say the F-bomb. One of them looks around and makes sure it's a safe place first. So.
Yeah, I have one of those at home too, but she's 3, so that opens up a whole different set of circumstances for me in my life. But
You've had the same DCFS visits that I've had. So
yeah, but hey, we have a quarterback, so
isn't it? It's crazy, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen or read the Nate Tice article.
Yeah,
who normally is a bit more balanced, I would say, in some of his QB takes, but for him to kind of go off as positively, and everyone is,
you could almost see this smile on his face as he was typing that article out. You know what I mean? When you're reading it, you see,
because we all have it as fans when we watch it, and it doesn't mean that there's not going to be more pitfalls and things, like,
Right.
but you can see exactly what he's thinking.
Yep.
Like, how often have we ever been in a place where we have a Bears quarterback getting praise for their processing,
Yeah.
and reading a defense, and again through 6 weeks.
What a novel concept.
It is, and Sean, yes, to your point, Tice was a big Drake May guy. He
QB1.
had him as QB1, yeah.
Yep.
So that was, and to be fair, and listen, some people take this as taking shots at Jaden. It's not. What Jaden Daniels is doing is very impressive. I don't want to take away from it, but he's making single reads, right? They're pushing him into places and they're accentuating all of his strengths, which a great offensive coordinator will do.
Here's
But-
the direct quote. I'll put it
Yeah.
up, Cars, and you can read it right there. This is directly from Nate Tice.
It's that last part when you talk about intelligence and creation, like, that's what shows up the most. And you go back and you watch a lot of these games and you see a lot of what's happening right now around the NFL, and there's a lot of, we've talked about it before, Jalen Hurts has taken a step back. He's not seeing the field that well. Jordan Love, to me, has been feast or famine, right? He's second, I think, in the NFL in interceptions, and he's only played 5 games,
Right,
because
yep.
he's been.
Yeah, and he's had a couple fuck it throws. I mean, let's be honest, that they've just made a play on. And hey, that's part of the NFL. And I mean,
Absolutely.
Patrick Mahomes has had plenty of those plays, and it just is what it is. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. And even with Jordan Love, I'm not going to say he, as a quarterback, has exceeded of where I thought he was going to be. Jordan Love, I mean, just with the season that he had last year,
Yeah.
but again, man, it's we talked about this last night with Jaden Daniels. He has been better in the NFL initially than I thought he was going to be, and I have no problem admitting that. But when you put Caleb Williams down and Jaden Williams down, and you're looking at both situations, Cars, they are both asked to do 2 completely different things as NFL quarterbacks,
And
night and day.
And a lot of that is because Washington doesn't have the horses. They've got great running backs, and a great running game, which opens up. And I like Terry McLaurin, but I've gone on record as saying Terry would be our 4th receiver here on this team right now. And so, Zach Ertz is a great player 5 years ago. He's still pretty good.
Yep.
But it's really Austin Eckler that's making a lot of this go on the screen pass and a lot of those short things. And they're doing a lot of rollouts and, a lot more half of the field, right? And again, when you talk about doing rollout after rollout, it's because you're taking away half the field. Now they're doing some lovely window dressing when they do that, but they give him outlets out behind him, whether that's Eckler or whether that's Robinson, where he can kind of throw back across the field and take those things away. But he's not sitting there necessarily in the pocket and reading a defense and going to his 3rd or 4th read. He is looking guys off on plays, right? He's doing some of those little eye manipulate, but he's not doing the full picture. And that's always going to be the jump. When Lamar, look how long it took Lamar to fully become Lamar.
Right.
That's not at anybody. This is difficult. This is to go from where they were in college to doing this is not just a graduate level, right? It's PhD level shit. And so that's gonna take time. But to have a rookie doing that in game 4, 5, and 6
Yep.
is extremely, extremely, extremely rare, and it's super encouraging for where we want to go.
Yeah, and I mean, I look back to, when everybody wants to nitpick, who the Bears have played. If we just look at Washington,
I
they
gotta
played.
I gotta sign up for two of some of what they've done there. But yeah,
Oh
Green
yeah,
Bay's
yeah,
the same.
yeah.
Right? Green Bay's the same. But if you
Yep.
want to look like when you look at who they've
Right.
beaten, right? Their 5 wins are the Giants, Bengals, Cardinals, Brown, and Panthers. Of
Yeah.
their 19 sacks, 7 of them came against the Cleveland Browns.
Yep.
So you look at it, and when they faced a good or decent offense, Tampa, Cincy, and Baltimore, they got chewed up. And they get chewed up. The offense for them has really been the differentiator because how many times do you see it, Shane, where you've got a top 10 defense in the worst way for being the largest yards per carry and yards per pass attempt
Right.
out there, and they're the third worst defense in yards before contact, meaning a running back gets 2.5 yards
Yep.
oftentimes before contact, and that's with Jonathan Allen being on the field a lot of the time, and that's not going to be the case anymore. So
Yeah.
Bears get a lot of shit, but who is Washington beaten? Who is Green
Right.
Bay beaten? Who has
And the thing about it is, Cars, we've been Bears fans our entire lives, and we've seen teams that are like Carolina. We've seen teams that are having difficulties and banged up, like the Rams or like the Jags, and the Bears have lost and
the
lost to
Brock
them handily.
Osweiler game?
Well, we talked about it last night. Do you remember the 2017 Green Bay game when Brett Hundley came
Yeah.
to Soldier Field and beat the Bears?
We're part of the reason Brock Osweiler got that massive deal.
Yeah.
And I think that to me was why what was so different last week. And I will listen, I'm never going to tell anybody how to fan and being apprehensive, but let's be honest. How many of us expected them to lose 2 weeks ago in London? Because
Yeah.
that's what Bears do,
That's
right?
what they
Like
do. Yeah.
it's a travel game to London. We notoriously have not shown up well there.
Let everybody be
Traveling.
honest, Cars. After the first drive,
Oh,
everybody
people are.
that was a Bears fan was like, "Here we fucking go.
Oh,
Bears are gonna Bears." I did.
absolutely. And there's a lot of reason for it. But for whatever reason, and there are a lot. I think one of the biggest difference in this team, Shane, and I'm sure you've probably talked about it before, is even when you could say like people were still with Nagy, and there was that argument, is really the defense was close together because the offense couldn't do diddly squat.
Right.
And this is the reason that this team has stayed together, even through that kind of, quote unquote 1-2 rough start where they should have been 2-1 at that point in time, is because the offense can do something. The team has seen it
Yep.
enough. And you saw it in that Tennessee game, right? When the defense was like, we
Yeah.
know you're going to have to pick us up at some game. And that's what's going to have to happen. And this is one of those games that might be just simply because of the way that Washington runs the ball. But the whole room believes in each other. And
Yep.
despite what we may think about Flus and his time management, which is still an issue, but despite what we may see, this team has been after Indy has been extremely well prepared.
Cars, they're 9-5 over their last 14 games. It's been
And
over a calendar year since they lost a game at home.
And nobody else in the NFL has that type of streak. Nobody else has given up as few points, right? Like, was it 10 weeks in a row or 12 weeks in a row of 21
11, I
or
believe.
less?
I think they're going for 12 this week. Yeah.
Yeah. And
21 or less.
which is just phenomenal. We don't have the names that everybody else loves. I think you have to give this staff a lot of credit for the way that they fixed it. I gave Waldron a lot of shit, and man, did he self-scout and fixed so many of his gaps. There are still some there.
Yep. No,
But you know
and
what?
I think that there's a lot of questions, and I totally agree with what you're saying. And the first year, you can't count the first year in terms of the rebuild, because that was the stripped down year that we've been begging this franchise to do forever.
Yep.
They would never strip it down, and that's Ryan Poles decided to go there. And
Thank God.
oh yeah, I mean, so this is year 3 with these guys, and yeah, has there been some questionable moves made along the way? Yes, they've moved off of them. Nate Davis is going to be the next guy up. We'll see what happens there. There hasn't been a massive move that you're just like, it's drafting Mitch number 2 overall and then following it up with Adam Shaheen. Those type of moves. Ryan Poles is fucked up, but again, Carson, I think this is important, and Bears fans can't fall into the trap of, we talked about the trade deadline last night on Keeping It 100, and everybody, we know how Phil feels about the offensive line coach and the offensive line, and he was talking about Braxton Jones, and everybody's like, we need to go get a left tackle. Well, who? You're not going to go out and make a move for a left tackle right now, because guess what? They're not available. But what do we have? We have the asset. You have a first rounder, you have Carolina's second rounder, and our own second rounder to make that move potentially in the draft. You probably going to end up being a defensive lineman and 2 offensive linemen, or 2 offensive linemen and a defensive lineman as the first 3 picks, and you hope and pray something happens with Trey Smith in Kansas City where they are like, we're going to put resources someplace else because we've dumped. I don't think it'll get to that point. I expect him to stay there, but that's the move you make. If he was available, you pay him, and then you have those assets, and then you start building your offensive line that way. In terms of trading for an offensive line,
It's not happening.
lineman, it's going to be a guy like Wyatt Teller that you hope you can squeeze
A season out of.
or maybe 2, whatever, and hope that he stays healthy. But in terms of, he's got to make a move for a left tackle. That's easy to say. And what do we say? Can't just say that. Give me some fucking names. There you go. Give me some fucking names. They're not there.
They're not. There's a reason that mid-tier, there's no offensive lineman at the quality of like a Darrell Taylor that are available, right? Like that what Darrell Taylor did for us in the pass rush. There's not a move like that around on the offensive line, because offensive lines are problems everywhere.
Every single team.
Every team. We talk a lot about, when all the hubbub was about Pittsburgh, and Zach Frazier has looked pretty good. Broderick hasn't. We heard all 2 years ago, John Michael Schmitz. He's been just a guy in New York, right? Like there are always, you're going to take chances, right? You have to. But there's not enough offensive linemen.
No.
It's
just like this, Mike. It's a non.
You're not going to get a first round. You're not going to get a guy who was just drafted this last year.
A young guy like that, and I mean the guy that they brought in from Dallas is
Tyrone Smith, isn't it?
Yeah, is a shell of him former self, and it's fun to think about. It's just it's not realistic. If the Bears make a big time move at offensive tackle,
Tyrone Smith, yeah,
it's going to be in the NFL draft,
and it has to be, unless you catch a team where the wheels completely just fall off.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Jedrick Wills at Cleveland, right? Who has not really lived up overall to the hype, but at some point after you've traded Cooper, do you just punt on that and you as the Bears think you can reclaim him? But these are all like, there's a reason you only see pass rushers and wide receivers, because middle tier wideouts and middle tier and aging wideouts and middle tier defensive ends, There's a lot of those. You're talking about those defensive ends that get you 4 to 6 sacks, right? Maybe up to 8 in a big year. But on the offensive line, there's a reason that Mekhi Becton is in Philly. It's because he's got
And
all
he's
this talent, all this ability,
and he's gonna get paid.
and
He's gonna get paid this offseason.
he absolutely is.
Yeah.
But his talent level just keeps getting him chances. And he's
Yep.
finally putting it together, which again looks a lot like get away from the Jets and you're going to play better. That's a little bit of a curse. But it's just, Shane, I think we talked about it in previous weeks. Seattle in a draft did
Yeah.
Cross and Lucas.
Yep.
That hasn't worked out. Paris Johnson Jr. is playing pretty decently for the Cardinals. I've been a fan of that, but Broderick has not been really good. You look at Evan Neal is second string,
Yeah.
and even with Thomas being out, I don't think that guy's going to see the field still.
Right. Well, let's be honest, Cars. Our top 10 offensive tackle hasn't lived up to expectations overall.
He has been significantly better the last couple of weeks.
Yes,
yeah,
he has,
but he's
but
still
overall,
not dominating the way that we had hoped.
Yep.
And so
But-
you just
But guess what? Bears are nowhere near moving. He's not going anywhere.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's the
Oh,
thing.
yeah.
These guys aren't getting moved.
No, you're who is the guy? Stromberg that got cut by the Commanders. Maybe you look at him as a move,
Right.
but it's the move that's going to solidify this is going to be Nate Davis gets cut, Ryan Bates comes back when he comes fully healthy. You know, the Matt Pryor move to right guard has been very good for us. You know, he's not not been a game changer, but he's been a massive upgrade.
Massive upgrade 100%, but he is firmly entrenched in the placeholder with the placeholder label. You know what I mean? He's a guy that we love to have him on the team, part of the team. He's not, it's written in pencil. And the wild card in all of this is Amagaji.
And that's something that you sit down and watch and where that goes as the year progresses. You know, I know that I've made my bed from what you've gotten out of Braxton Jones has been great for the place that you get, just like what happened with Charles Leno. And I understand at the end that Leno wasn't the greatest, but the guy was a really serviceable left tackle. And so I understand he doesn't do everything perfect, but you know what? You're better with him there than you are with a number 11 pick overall in Broderick Jones in Pittsburgh, right? And so you're getting more out of that. It's absolutely a position you can upgrade, but Shane's line of give me some names, there isn't someone available right now.
Yep, there's not.
That is an upgrade unless they are sold on Quran. And that's it. Braxton, at the end of the season, if they're as high as Quran as we kind of feel that they are, guess who's going to be your starting left tackle next year?
Quran Amagaji. Yeah.
It's going to be Quran. Braxton is going to be gone, or he's going to be a swing tackle. But you're just not. Everybody in San Francisco gets injured, or maybe then they'll trade Trent Williams. Other than that, and that's a tongue-in-cheek, that's not going to happen. There's nobody that's going to get moved.
Not on an offensive line. Yeah, I mean, the only shot is if you earmark the guy like last year or even 2 years ago that's buried on somebody's depth chart that you feel like you can move a pick for and pull them into your club. But even then, that's 100% a gamble on that your analysis, your breakdown on that player was correct. And then Cars, we know how it is. What's the biggest thing that offensive linemen need? They need consistency together as a unit. And you're bringing in a guy this late. It's honestly not even especially with a young guy, it's not a realistic ask. If you have a guy that's been in the league for a while, that's, 29, 30, 31 years old that's maybe bounced around the league a little bit, it's a little bit easier. He's seen the league. But if you go out and flip a pick for a guy that's a OT3
Yep.
for a team, it's a big ask, man, to really expect anything out of him.
Oh,
It's more a move for 2025.
it absolutely is. And it's take out the Carolina game, right? When you look at the list, the offensive line has been playing better because it's been consistent. They've laid out the same 5 the whole time. And you're finally seeing some play out of Tevin Jenkins where he is finally showing you that he was the player that you were hoping he was going to be at week 1, and he showed it to you at week 4. You're absolutely right, because it's, how do you know communication wise where stuff is supposed to go? And we've seen the plays, right, where everyone else is blocking left and Tevin, for whatever reason, is blocking right. We always see in some of these plays that one player isn't doing the right thing, and how they communicate, that does get better overall when they stay together and they understand the tendencies and where people are going to be. But I just don't see that as a move, because I think the thing that we have to kind of get used to, the Bears want to make noise this year.
Yep.
It would be great if they make the playoffs, and they're going to push to make the playoffs, but they are not going to sacrifice anything to make the playoffs this year. They're not going to sacrifice a future first, a future second to get an offensive lineman. They're not going to do that, because they're going to build through the draft.
And it just, they're, like we've said for the past 10 minutes, there's not that move on the offensive line to be made. No,
unless the only other name and we've talked about the guy before, is McCoy at Saints. If the Saints finally go, holy shit, we gotta redo all this stuff. There's just, you need a center. You need and I forgot that McCoy isn't even healthy this year, right? They're playing Connor McGovern. I don't know what you do. You're just stuck right now. And
it's going to be an off-season move.
Bad. I think when most of our fans look at it, they're like, "Oh my God, the line is so bad." Look around the league. Mahomes is getting hit a ton.
Mm-hmm. Did you know
Green
that he has not thrown a touchdown pass in the month of October? They said.
Yeah, I mean, he's got less touchdowns than Caleb Williams right now, which is mind-blowing to me, right? That we say this at this point. He's getting hit. You look at Trevor Lawrence, they spent all that money on him. He's getting hit a ton. Kyler Murray, they've done a lot to spend that in. Cleveland had spent a lot on that offensive line.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, and then you have teams like Carolina that went out and blew up the guard market, and that's, are you giving? I'm not giving Tevin $100 million.
Oh,
never. Yeah, but that's, I mean, Robert Hunt got that from Carolina, and then they paid two guards.
They did, but that's what shows you what desperation does.
Yep.
And so, and there are other things and I'm not, again, Scottish, I'm not saying this to pick on you as well, but they didn't look so great against Baltimore. And that's no shot, but Cincinnati's not a formidable defense. When you look at those teams that were shown up previously, they're not good defenses that they've been beating up on either. And that's what a lot of these teams will do. The two best offensive lines in the NFC, Detroit and Minnesota. Full sort of stop right now. Those two are the cream of the crop. And again, we always can lament the We would have felt
Right.
terrible about Darisaw draft day, but man, we'd feel a lot better about that
Yeah,
right
and
now.
I know we've talked about it, and that was if they didn't pull off the Fields trade, that was the target.
And we would have been so much better. But and it just kind of goes to show you there's a reason that the Chargers went after Alt, right, to remake
Yeah.
that offensive line. And guess what? Alt hasn't been setting the world on fire either from his
Nope.
position. Herbert, a lot of that's because of the wide receivers too, but Herbert's averaging 160-ish yards a game
Yeah.
passing. They can't pass block. It's kind of wild. The Eagles have had better lines, but they're not playing as well. And part of the reason they're not playing as well is because the quarterback isn't
Yeah.
making anyone afraid.
Yeah, and they're a different team when Lane Johnson is banged up. They're a
And Mulata's out too, isn't he?
yeah, and Malata on top of it. Yeah, and Lane has always been banged up, but he is it just shows you how good Lane Johnson is when he's on the field, but when he's banged up, I mean, it doesn't just affect their offensive line. It affects the entire Philadelphia Eagles team. And they have a horrible record without Lane Johnson, but that's what it is. I think people, I think they look to Madden and they're like, oh, I need a left tackle. I'm going to go out. Oh, this guy's who's the best guy that's 24 or younger. I'm going to go out and grab him, and it just does not work that way. Unfortunately, it's especially on the offensive line. You may grab lightning in the bottle. The Bears have done it. Back when they John Tate was a restricted free agent, they included the poison pill.
That's
And
right.
that's how they got him over here. And even before that, you can remember we got Blake Brockermeyer from Carolina in free agency. They brought over Reuben Brown, and that was a hit. Roberto Garza
They
was
did get a decent bit about Orlando Pace. It wasn't full on Orlando, but they got a
right.
little bit out of it. Like, yeah, and again, I'm going to say this real quick. Washington isn't, but Washington is also getting out the ball in about 2.4 seconds because everything's meant to get the ball out and out quick. So when you look at like they're not getting pressured, they're not getting sacked. Yeah, that's because one, they're moving the quarterback around, who's a very mobile guy, and they've shown that they're not afraid to sprint and use him and use him in the run game, which is why he's fucking injured already. But it's not a true lineup for why. The biggest issue that the reason that they're doing is they're moving him and they're getting the ball out quick. None of the teams are really killing it. You know what I mean? From like an offensive standpoint, we don't, outside of Minnesota and Detroit, no other teams are really sitting out there and just beating up on people and controlling the line of scrimmage and just dominating at that level like we are kind of used to. We're used to seeing Green Bay in that conversation. We're used to talking about Kansas City having a really good line, but it's just the NFL has a talent issue, and it remains my belief that kind of like all those years ago, anybody that could catch a ball played wide receiver instead of corner. Right now, all of these big guys realize they're going to get paid a hell of a lot more to go sack a quarterback than they are to go protect a quarterback, and that's where they're going.
Yeah, I mean, well, just like what we talked about, man, and it's not just the guys on the outside; it's the guys on the interior of the line that are getting paid. I mean, that's where we've seen the massive boom is on the interior of the line. Because of teams like
yeah. Well, it was because of Aaron Donald, right? And
quickest
Aaron
pathway to the
Donald,
quarterback.
yeah. And before him, you remember the guy on the Giant on the Vikings back in our day.
The
I always had
defensive Randall.
the defensive Randall. Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
John Randall. Tiny little guy, but could get in, right? And was explosive and fast and could push through and was generating that quick pressure. All of these guys, left tackles tend to be better overall positions, but guard and center, you're getting, you get a lot of guys like Cody Whitehair who are hail, throwing bays of hail and have short area strength because those guys, tends to be your least athletic position player, a guard or a center.
Yep. Yeah, no, man, I hear you. It's going to be interesting to see how they go. I mean, I know this is off of the offensive line topic, but just to stay on the trade deadline, I mean, I think I have a feeling, Cars, if they make a move, the smaller moves, if they were to trade Khalil Herbert or Nate Davis or Valus or something like that. But I feel like if they make a move to acquire somebody to bring in here, I feel like it's going to be a defensive lineman.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Shay Norling from ESPN 1000, who's on with Cap and Jay Hood, kind of don't want to say he's working in the background, but he does updates and stuff like that. He shared that the Bears have been connected to Carl Granderson from the Saints, defensive end. And I'm just looking, what was the deal? He signed a 4-year, $52 million contract, $11 million signing bonus, 35.7 guaranteed. Yeah, and they have the Saints cap. I mean, Cars, I don't even know how to explain how crazy their
it-
cap. It's
It's the worst cap
yeah.
situation. They are, just to put it in perspective, I guess, and I always hate that I use that phrase. Next year, they are over the cap right now by $70 million.
Yeah, right now, and that's the thing, and that's why you could see them move a guy like Granderson to
And
I'm just looking at it here, Cars. They converted his $9 million roster bonus into a signing bonus that cleared 7.2 in cap. That was on February 26, 2024.
yeah. Oh,
And
it's
it's just they're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and it's
well, they can't move Carr next year because his dead cap number's 50 million. 50, and he's going to get paid 51. Marshawn Lattimore, remember when he was incredible? He's still pretty good, but Marshawn Lattimore at 29 is going to be 31 million. Ramczyk, who's out this year, 29 million. Cameron Jordan, 20 million. Taysom Hill, 18 million next year.
Crazy.
Eric McCoy, 16. Peyton Turner has a 13 point something million. You talk about a team that has compounded their awful spending by also drafting just obnoxiously bad. So yeah, like you look down the list, there's not a lot of places for an old team to save on this cap space without punting more and more and more. It's why that redo of the deal for Kamara made 0 sense, because you're not winning. Atlanta and Tampa Bay, this is their division for the next several years. You might as well take your medicine. And so do they go make a deal here to start, look at their last couple of draft picks, right? It's been Peyton Turner. He's been bad. Trevor Penning, bad, right? Like they're a team that may make a move, but it's
Right.
It's crazy. It really is.
Yeah, and I'm just I think that the Bears, it's going to be interesting because I know Jacob Martin, it looks like he's going to be back. He's been full go. I don't know. The Bears must be obviously pretty high on him for them to keep him around under the circumstances. I don't have a lot of confidence in him. But
nope.
If you can bring in a guy like Granderson, that is the type of move that I could see them. You want to have the ability to have bodies where you can just keep on throwing fastball after fastball after fastball, and you're not falling off. And you want guys with motors that are just going to keep on going. Is Darrell Taylor the perfect defensive end? No, he's far from it. But
he's
the way that he plays football is perfect for what Flus wants in this defense, and he's an amazing complement to Montez Sweat. And you want more guys like that. And I can't say it enough. Ryan Poles is he's an aggressive dude. I go back to draft night cars. I'm not sure if Ian Cunningham, if he's not your assistant GM, I'm not so sure Ryan Poles does not trade up for the guy that they got at number 9.
Yeah, I think
If Cunningham's not there. He
I think
was
it's a very fair point.
Yep. He was ready to go, and that's why you like to have guys like that because he's like, "Hey, just, you know, chill a little bit." Kinda, the percentages are in our favor, but I explained this last night, 2 cars, and I look at the Chase Claypool trade, and I talked about it, when we made it. I wasn't in love with the trade, and it ended up being a complete disaster, and to Pole's credit, he moved off of it, but you put yourself in the position of being a general manager, and you get fucking torched on a deal like that.
You get gunshot.
The pressure that he must have felt with the Montez Sweat deal when you are negotiating that trade, I can't even imagine. And it's a big trade in and of itself, but when you have the Chase Claypool trade hanging over you, it's a lot. I compare it to like when they say a corner, if you give up a big play, it just flip the fucking page, man. Go to the next play, write it off, move on. And that's got to kind of do that as a GM. And Ryan Poles, to his credit, has done it. He's been burned, but then he's also moved on, and it didn't prevent him from going after Montez Sweat. Will he do it now in a very competitive NFC North? If the Bears go out and put one on Washington, it's only going to add to his trigger finger on deadline day if he can add an asset to this team, I feel like.
Oh, I mean, you're bargain hunting a little bit, right? Yeah. And not meaning that you're looking for cheap players, but that Darrell Taylor trade is a highway robbery at this point for what we did. And we got there because we had a better cap situation. Seattle had slightly mismanaged theirs, and there was an abundance of players. And I feel like when you look at, again, if you go just look at the standings, right, and around the NFL of teams that are bad but slightly expensive. So, using the Saints, the Rams are looking at, we're not in the Cooper Cup, right? But they're going to make a move there. You're going to look at Dallas at some point. They're going to have to make a move because that team is dead in the water. You've got an expensive Jaguars team. They're dead in the water. Now, they don't have anybody on offensive line that you'd really like. But the Jets at some point are going to have to blow something up and make a move here because it's not working. The Dolphins, if they continue to lose and not be able to score points, even with Tua back there, they're going to. But Teron Armstead, had one great year after that deal, and he's been injured ever since. So there's not, again, on the offensive side, you're not going to find it. You're just going to find rotational defensive players that can make a difference. And to your point, we can rotate. We've been so good on creating pressure so far this year.
And I know I bring this team up a lot, but it's the Philly model of the year that they won the Super Bowl cars, where they loaded up and they had guy after guy after guy after guy where, you need a breather, boom, we're going to bring this in. And this is what you've seen with the Bears in this season, is when guys needed a breather or a coach has just said, hey, come off the field, we're going to get somebody else in there. That's when we've seen these guys get gashed, and that's what they want to play. And I should have started, somebody in the chat had, that they would love to see them look at defensive tackle. And I think it's a 100% part of it. They're not going to be prevented. I don't think it's going to be a huge name, but another guy that they can add to that rotation that they feel like can. That's all part of it. That when we're saying defensive line, we're not just talking edge rusher at all.
No, like the Chris Williams deal, right? Extremely important. But the the Bears have 18 sacks as a team right now, and that's across 13 different players for those 18 sacks, right? And that's because they're blitzing. That's because they're moving people around. You're
What did we have
getting
last year as a team?
like 20. No, we had like 30 something, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't many because I mean Montez had 12 and a half of them between.
We had a total of 30 last year,
Yeah,
and we're at 18 through 6 games.
through 6 games. Yeah,
And again, with the thing we can't talk and I can't uproot enough, and I'm sure you saw it and talked about it a lot. Who do we see now on defensive end on third and longs? Who's that number 99
yeah.
on the outside with
Mr.
DeMarcus
Jervon
Walker?
Dexter.
Yeah, like when you have this flexibility, they're getting more out of Austin Booker early than I thought. You know, that first game when he got gashed in the run game and they kind of pulled him
He
back
hasn't
a
put
little
up the
bit.
massive stats cards, but he is a piece. No doubt
He's
about
a
it with this kid.
fun piece,
Yeah.
man. He is. I mean, when you kind of look at what he's doing for a guy who's on the field for he's got a sack and 2 additional quarterback hits this year for a guy who hasn't played a ton.
And came out early. Don't forget that. And they talked if he had stayed for another year at Kansas, there was a lot of places that had him earmarked as a top of the second round, maybe even an outside chance as a late round 1 guy.
Oh,
If he
easily.
had
If
come
he had
back.
had the
Yep.
season again, just had the season he had this year again. Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. And so it's crazy. And Sean, I think you're exactly right. That's the other best part about the way that this team has been built. There are good, talented guys with motors all over the place.
Yep.
Like Edmonds and Edwards are criminally underrated and
Big time.
so much fun to watch because they are fly. TJ Edwards,
Yeah.
maybe one of the he's approaching that Lance Briggs thing where Briggs was so good but somewhat underappreciated because the other person next to him. Edwards is phenomenal.
He is.
We talk a lot about Billings, but fuck, Edwards
Yep.
is great.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, you saw when he left Philly, he was just on with Cole Kmet talking about, hitting free agency and coming, being an undrafted guy. He really thought he was going to be drafted out of Wisconsin. He wasn't. He went to Philly. They essentially told, even as well as he played, they told him, at that point, Philly is like, yeah, they just don't invest in linebackers and pay them.
Yep.
So they told him flat out that, yeah, we're not going to re-sign you. And he said he heard pretty early on that there was a chance for him in Chicago. And he's like, that's all it took for me. He could, because that was home for him, grew up a Bears fan. And he's like, man, when I heard that, he said, that was my focus. And you remember, that's another thing that Ryan Poles right out the gate. You saw TJ Edwards and we're like, oh, there's our linebacker,
Yep.
That's it. And then what was it, Cars? 20 minutes later or 25 minutes later, you and I we were doing the show. I'm like, hey, dude, they just signed Nate Davis in free agency. We'll go talk about TJ Edwards and Nate Davis. And then boom, Tremaine Edmonds, when we're doing the countdown, it came in. So yeah, man, it's very interesting when you're talking about NFL pro free agency being an absolute fucking minefield. It hasn't worked out with Nate Davis. Building your linebacker core around Tremaine Edmonds and TJ Edwards and having an amazing backup. I don't even want to consider him a backup, but having Sanborn there.
And you got
it's
the
awesome.
Free agent in front of him in Billings, right? And I think I like even the backup guy, and I can't, Amen.
Sewell?
I can't pronounce his last name, and I'm not going to try.
It's got the word bong in it, so
yeah,
that's the easiest way. Ogbom Gwamiga.
But he even flashed. He made plays this preseason. We talked about the cornerback room. I don't think Poles and Co. get enough credit for that cornerback room. You've got
Oh man,
it,
wouldn't there's not a secondary group in the NFL that I would take over the Chicago Bears, and that's not being me being a Chicago Bears homer. That's 100% factual
and you're
from
not
my
even
book.
just talking. We've said this last week. If you gave us our backup cornerbacks, Terrell Smith, Jalen Jones, Blackwell, those guys would start for a lot of the teams.
Yeah.
And if you and specific, I'd tell you one thing. I would take our second string defensive backs right now over the Commanders' starting defensive backs.
I agree.
Like, and it's not even remotely close.
Yeah.
So it's, I just, and Zane, like, I get the Claypool thing, but right now, that keeping a Flus thing, he has to get a ton of credit for the way the team is playing, for how he has self-scouted, the way that him adding Washington to that defensive staff and the changes that he has come along with is not something that I would have expected to happen after year one, and how overly proud of himself that I thought he was. I think he got humbled, and I think he made some great moves. I don't know right now that you can sit down and complain about keeping Flus. That may change, but so far this season,
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's things that you can definitely question. We've talked about situationally and stuff like that. I think that that's probably true. I mean, you watch a Chiefs game, and still to this day, Andy Reid, his clock management is abysmal.
awful.
And
John Harbaugh is terrible
Yeah.
at it. Mike Tomlin is terrible at it.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't want to make this sound like I'm pacifying Matt Eberflus as the head coach, but year one, if anybody had expectations with the way that they I mean, you're trading away Khalil Mack and making all of those moves and stripping everything down bare, and then essentially the turnaround to where they are now roster wise, Cars, is a pretty big testament to the work that they've done. Every single team is going to have a Chase Claypool, moment that they want back. But again, I have to praise Ryan Poles, because Jerry Angelo would have kept Chase Claypool. Said, "Hey, we made the investment. We're going to figure it out." And but I'm right. That's the way that they
No.
operated.
I laugh because it's true.
Yeah.
You've talked about it before. We would have moved Sanborn to middle linebacker because he played so well. That would have been the move. That would, we might have TJ Edwards, but we wouldn't have that, right? And for everyone that I continue to say that Roquan is a fine player.
Yeah.
And he is.
I have some
know
numbers
that the
on
media,
that, by the way. I know I shared them with you guys, but I shared them with you and Ryan Cox when we were texting, but I have them right here someplace.
He's
Let me pull them up.
a fine player, but he makes more of a difference in Baltimore, and even really then, not as much as you would like for a player of his talent.
Yeah. No, I hear you. All right, so Tremaine Edmonds has been with the Bears for 21 games. Played for the Bears 21 games. In those 21 games, he has 10 passes defensed, 5 picks, 1 quarterback sack. Roquan Smith has played with Baltimore for 31 games. He has 14 passes defense, 3 picks, and 3.5 quarterback sacks. And when you're talking about the two, Roquan Smith, the second that he got traded to Baltimore, went from a 7th or 8th ranked linebacker in the NFL overall to top 2, you know,
Yeah.
League wide just by him getting traded to Baltimore,
He
according
put
to
up the same stats
experts.
in Baltimore that he put up here and was a first team all pro player.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing that I always look at is you really should compare him to TJ Edwards because TJ was playing the same position that
Yep.
he's going.
Yeah,
And
he would have been a will. He would have been a will in this and in this system.
and you're getting the same level of production from TJ, more interceptions. So TJ's got the 3 interceptions. He's got 2 forced fumbles. He's got multiple fumble recoveries, right? He's got more sacks than Roquan over the last 2 years. He's got more passes defended than Roquan over the last 2 years. And you're getting that out of a guy that you're paying a fraction less. And it's one of those things. Baltimore, because of the way their defense is set up, they play the 3-4. He's a better fit there. No harm, no foul. But we weren't going to keep playing a 3-4 just for Roquan. And we now pay basically 2 players to play middle and weak what we would have been playing or close to paying Roquan just for
You
one.
traded. So this is, I have all this down because I'm fascinated by this when you go on, because obviously Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, is clearly filled with football experts. But
And porn.
yes, and porn bots. Would you rather have Roquan Smith or would you rather have Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Jervon Dexter, Noah Sewell, and you also got AJ Klein, the journeyman, special teamer linebacker in that deal?
No, you make that trade a million times out of a million.
Edwards, Dexter, Sewell, Klein, or Roquan Smith. You're a moron if you would choose Roquan Smith over that.
You have to have
stupid.
you have to have the depth, right? And the thing with Baltimore is every year I love them until it gets to the playoff time and they don't, they just don't win. And there's a lot of different reasons for that, but they get all these accolades because of how great Ozzie Newsome was for so long and that they were such a great franchise, and they win so many games. But kind of like what it's been with Tomlin in Pittsburgh, while he's won some more games, there's been a long time where Harbaugh does not win playoff games. He just hasn't. And they've gotten byes, they've lost. Last year, I know that they, what was it? Last year, they walked in and got beaten in the AFC Championship game, but they lost wild card games. They've lost division games after byes, first week byes. They just haven't been the same team.
Right.
But because they are so good in the regular season, everybody overlooks the playoff problems that they've had.
Yeah. Frank, that's 100% not true.
Yeah.
And
No,
I'll tell you who my source on that is, and it's the actual player that you're talking about. Not true.
He wasn't even this is not
even if they
true.
offered more, he was not coming back.
He wanted to win, and he didn't see it happening.
Want to be in Chicago.
He was done.
That is directly from David Montgomery. 100%. He did not want to be here. Had nothing to do with money. The Bears offered more money. I'm sure if they went some exorbitant amount where, nobody was going to go, sure. He probably would have changed his mind, which 99.9% of people would. He didn't want to be here. His words.
He wanted to go win. He was tired. The losing was taking
And
its toll on him.
he wasn't happy with his usage, and there was part of that. You know how it is. We had Thomas Jones on here, and you look at it, and guys, when you have a 40-yard run, and you're so strict in how your usage is with guys, it's like, oh, it's your time to come out. Well, you know how it is, Cars, when Steph Curry goes out and hits 4 in a row, guess who's getting the ball next time down court?
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't give a shit if it's time for the backup to come in or not. But that was why. It was about usage, and he didn't want to be here, and he knew the potential in Detroit with the arrow pointing up, and that's why. That's directly from Demo.
Oh, and you can't blame him. The Nagy era destroyed what happened, right? Like the Nagy era was just by the way that they did everything.
Yeah.
It was bad. And people are going to take this the wrong way. Part of the reason that Monty is so good in Detroit is because he's paired with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, perfect compliment. They complement each other perfectly.
It's like the old Giants teams, right? When you have that like Barber and Dane, where you have that like combination of completely different skill set, completely different everything, with one of the two best offensive lines in football.
Yeah.
Like it's insane. And their quarterback is on the heater of heaters right now. And that takes a lot more pressure off of them.
Yeah, they're like you said, the Thunder and Lightning. That's why they've come out, and they're trying to coin the duo name Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah.
In Detroit. And I mean, it fits perfectly. Demo's Knuckles, and Gibbs is Sonic, and they've already extended David Montgomery in Detroit,
which is shocking.
Yeah.
Not again because of the player, but it's just you just don't see that happen in that kind of mold.
Yep.
And I'm like, I still think, to be honest, one of the positions we haven't talked about enough, if there's a decent running back that becomes available, I think the Bears also would make a move there as well, because they're clearly not big on Herbert.
Right.
And I feel like, Roshan is a nice player, but he's not.
He's just who he is, Cars. I mean, I like his power, but you guys have heard me talk about it. When I don't want to hear franchise pillar from anybody on Roshan. I like the power that he plays with, but if you can bring in another guy that can make, plays in the pass game and in the run game, that's got some, we used to say back in the cbfans.net days, the zoo, because that's all you hear when they're going by, zoo.
Yep.
You want to add another guy like that, and then you still have Roshan on top of it. Yeah, no, and the kid that got hurt, who's the kid that blew out his knee, the UDFA.
That kid,
I think Herbert would have been gone already.
He was
healthy. Yeah,
he was not making, because they don't trust him to pass protect, right? Like that's the issue. Is they Ian Wheeler.
Yeah,
Ian Wheeler was the guy, and I think they're still pretty big on him. But there's still a move potentially to be made there, and I think that this has been one of the bigger questions that I've had, especially when Waldron came out and said he's our goal line back, and then we don't use him on anything but kick returns.
Pass pro, Cars.
But it's pass pro. He is terrible at pass production.
So I'll give you guys some homework. Heading into the 2023 season, our starting running back was going to be who, Cars? Khalil Herbert.
Yep.
all off season, all you heard about Khalil Herbert heading into the 2023 off season is how he was working on his pass pro. Pass pro, pass pro, pass pro. Fast forward to game 1 last year, the first snap of 2023. He whiffs
Horribly, like not even
horribly
close.
the first play. And that's what it comes down to. I don't care how good you are. If you can't pass protect, you're not going to be in there. You can't be.
No, and
And
there are teams that are going to be willing to take that risk because of the explosive run options that you have. And that's why he was there last year.
yeah,
But with Swift now, who is a better pass blocker, and it's not even close, you're losing a little bit of explosiveness. You're gaining a little bit more power, and you're losing out massively on pass block. There's a reason Travis Homer was in there on plays before Khalil Herbert was.
yeah, no, and I get it. And where was the Robert? Listen, I love the dude. Bears aren't in a
He's not
position.
coming.
Well, yeah, the Bears aren't in a position that you can draft a running back in the first round, and that's where he's going.
You just, in the way the league is set up right now,
I love the player. You can't do it.
and you look at, again, Saquon is having a great year, but he's having it in Philly, right? Like,
Yeah.
Bijan is horribly limited by that play caller and the team. Breece Hall is limited by the offensive scheme. But you look at like first round running backs, Gibbs has looked worth it. Najee Harris and Etienne, I wouldn't go back in those drafts. I wouldn't do that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, absolutely not. Josh Jacobs, absolutely not. Like, you just don't draft them in the first round. And we just spent the whole time sitting down and talking about we need offensive line help.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what we'll do.
Yeah, you can't. They're not in the. I mean, that would just that would
He's going to go to Dallas.
It'd be a wild misuse of resources for you to draft a running back in round 1. And listen, I mean, Cars, I talked to you and Ryan Cox about him heading into the college football season. I'm like, this dude, you just put on tape and you're like, holy shit, he's a fucking alien out there. I mean, when you're heading into a game and your over under on yardage is 188.5, it's mind numbing. And then he has 163 in the first half. Yeah.
Yeah. You get to 1,000 yards rushing on less than 100 carries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, it was 93 carries or something obscene.
Yeah.
Like,
it's like
that
me playing Madden against my 3-year-old daughter.
Oh,
you know what I mean? It's crazy.
And with the shelf life of these guys,
yeah,
the fact that Derrick Henry was drafted the same year as Ezekiel Elliott, let that one set in for a minute. That one of those guys barely looks like the same player and the other guy is just destroying. But these guys just don't. They have, like, Dalvin Cook was drafted 7 years ago. Last year, he couldn't see the field because he was so brutal. Yeah. McCaffrey has been so injured that he hasn't been able to play this year. Last year was his best year. He looked incredible. But with the mileage on that guy's legs, would you do it? And that 2017 draft, Fournette out of the league, McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook out of the league, Joe Mixon, resurrected year so far in Houston. Kamara, not the same. Kareem Hunt, not the same. James Conner, who had a great couple of years, not the same. Some guy named Tariq Cohen, not the, you know what I mean? Like, you're talking about these guys 7 years ago. You can't, if you draft a running back, you cannot count on these guys to be on your team 7 years later. You're just, it's
we signed Tariq Cohen to the dumbest extension, one of the dumbest ones I've ever seen, which was not warranted by Ryan Pace, and he never played a dime.
No,
never played under that deal, that extension here.
nope.
He signed it, and I believe was it like the next week when he
It
blew out
was
his ACL?
relatively close. Like
Yeah,
it
it was
was.
close.
It. You
It's
just don't do it. You got to do the offense. It has to be what happens. It has to be the line. You're going to be looking at picks on both sides.
Mhm.
The other moves they could potentially made could potentially be, again, Nate Davis could potentially move. Maybe you see a Tyler Scott. I don't know where he is in their hopes and dreams and things, but it's gonna any moves that happen could be the defensive side, and it's gonna be 1 to 2 players, and that'll be about it.
Yeah, and I'm just looking, and it's not that you're gonna dive into free agency, but the names in free agency, James Conner, Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Jeff Wilson, AJ Dillon, Nick Chubb, Javonte Williams, Zeke Elliott, Travis Homer, Alexander Madison, Naheem Hines, Amir Abdullah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, we just talked about, J.K. Dobbins.
I
Jake.
love Nick Chubb, but I could never pay him
Yeah, I mean,
because
it's
of the fumbling.
yeah. Well, and then the I'm shocked, man. I got to give that dude so much credit for coming back from what he came back from. I mean, when that happened, I believe we had Matt Waldman on. It was might have been just the week right after that, and he grew up a Cleveland Browns fan, and he just hated it. I mean, that was a devastator, that
Oh,
injury, to look at it. Picard's, Chuba Hubbard, another name. We talked about that. I think, wasn't it Ryan that sent us the?
yeah. That'd be a guy that I would 100% see the Bears go out and do.
Yep. But there's guys
And
out there. There's interesting names. But like you
you're
got
not
Khalil
offering
Herbert.
up a whole lot for it.
Yeah.
That's kind of the point at this junction, right?
Yeah,
Is
Jordan Mason in San Francisco is a restricted free agent. In the offseason. And what is he rating at? What is he, top 3 in the NFL in rushing?
Yeah.
Right now? And that's just, yeah.
I mean, you look at it all
Yeah.
those years ago. Remember when Miles Sanders was the big free agent for Carolina? What has he done since then?
He makes a lot of phone calls on game day to get the old I don't even know if I should share it. I don't want to, but yeah, I got a pretty good story about old Miles.
Oh, they're always a good one about good old Miles. But
Oh
it's
yeah, so the doozy. I probably shouldn't share it publicly,
yeah,
but
no, that's
yeah.
that one you want to share. But yeah, I think, Shane, the only other thing I wanted to go over is I just wanted to share some quick fun numbers about Caleb and what we're dealing with, because I think it's fun to kind of put in perspective. So obviously with the start that he had, he's 220 passing yards a game. Look at the list of names of people that he's above so far, right? Like, and when we look down the next one, 9 passing TDs in 6 games. The guys that he's ahead of up there, most of those have played an extra game, right? Most of them are 7 games in. He's thrown more. Got 5 interceptions. He's got less than. Again, look at the names out there when you're talking about who he's there and through. It's fun for me to go look at and say we're the 3rd best yard after catch group. Like, we talked a lot about it last year. We talked a lot about it during the Nagy era. Your offense is working when there's yards after the catch. When it's a lot of the Mitch era stuff where it was like throw that deep ball, the guy catches it and gets maybe a yard or 2 afterwards, and then he's tackled. It's a problem. And so this is what part of the reason that these drives are extending and carrying on is because we're seeing this thing called a slant. Have you ever heard of that passing play, Shane?
I've been screaming from the mountaintops for, I don't know, Cars. How long have we
40
known
years?
each other? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
For that, but third in that. And I think what's been interesting when you watch the kind of the breaking up that in between the first 3 and the last 3, he's cut his turnover worthy throws in half over that period of time. And he's done that while his time to throw is increased. Now, I know we talk about the defenses and stuff, but Carolina is kind of the exception. Jacksonville has two very good edge rushers, and they weren't really a problem at all for us, during that time. And so you see that he's holding the ball a little bit longer, which is part of why we're getting those football porn video clips of him, making full field reads. But he's doing that because he's comfortable, because he sees it. And at some point here, Shane, we're going to have the fun conversation how Rome is his preferred number one target. And it's not particularly close right now. And that's no shot at DJ Moore. DJ Moore is phenomenal, but Rome, I mean, we were talking about it, and that Rome is fantastic.
You may see him go off Sunday.
Oh my God. I mean, Commanders drafted Emmanuel Forbes 2 years ago.
Well, he was a rookie last year. Yeah.
He inactive last week.
Well, even if he was out there, I mean, he Cars, go back to the DJ Moore game last year against Washington. They pulled him off the field. He is 165 pounds soaking wet, maybe 170. Forbes.
It's the old Fred Smoot.
Yeah.
Right? Great coverage, but can't do anything
skills all over the place. But yeah, welcome to the NFL where big boys come to play.
I mean, in their corners, San Ristil, who I think is okay, but he's got to be the first, he's got to be their number one. Benjamin St. Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, and they've got two backups, Noah Igbaniwe, the guy who was from Auburn, right, and has bounced around a little bit, and Michael Davis. Their two safeties are Jeremy Chin and Quan Martin. Nobody in there that is concerning you whatsoever. And with Jonathan Allen now on he tore that pec, right? So he's out there. Starting defensive line is going to be Clellan Farrell, the Khalil Mack trade backup player, Deron Payne, who has not been the same player since he got that extension, Dorrance Armstrong, and at an outside linebacker, it's Dante Fowler.
If you look back at the defensive line, the vaunted defensive line of the Washington Redskins / Commanders, when it was Chase Young and Montez Sweat and Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne, the guy fourth on that list originally was the guy that we got in Montez Sweat.
And remember
you know what I mean?
And Deron Payne, right? Yeah. He had that great season, and everyone's like, contract year. He went from 11.5 sacks down to 4 last year. He has half a sack through 7 games this year. He had 2 quarterback hits all year.
Yeah.
Dexter has 11 to put into perspective that difference. Payne played when the contract was on the line, which we see all the time, and then gets paid. Foot comes off the gas a little bit. Which the shame for me is I would have loved. I think if Jonathan Allen would have been a piece that we would have looked at as a trade piece here. But when the best player on that team is 34-year-old Bobby Wagner.
Yeah. Yeah, but to my point, like what I'm saying, 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh yeah, he was the fourth, but he was the replaceable guy.
Yeah, he was the guy, and there was a lot of people. How is he going to be, as the lead dog? And it's actually been the other guy. I mean, Jonathan Allen is very, very good until he got hurt. But yeah, it's just, man, he's right here. Yeah, I remember, and I go back to Mike Lombardi. Why are you giving up a premium pick for a guy that you can just get in free agency? Guess where he was not going to sign in free agency, Cars?
Well, if we didn't go trade for him, he was going to be in Atlanta on a trade.
100%. Yeah.
That's been vetted multiple times. If the
Came right
Bears
from
think they'll
Montez
do it,
Sweat.
yeah.
He said it. Yeah, he expected Atlanta. Yeah, it's just what it is. And I mean, we were the guy that they picked up from New England. I mean, does he even have? I think he's got one sack. Judon.
I don't. Yeah,
Does he have
he
one?
has not been a great
And
addition to our
The Bears wanted him and wanted to sign him to an
1.5.
extension. Yep, so 1.5. But yeah, Sean Stewart, do you guys think Flus will actually move Jalen Johnson to the left side of the D to match up against Washington's tendencies?
No,
Yeah, I think they're going to stay with what they do, and don't forget you're getting Terrell Smith back too, so that's going to be a boost.
and the reason for that
And-
is, again, you're not afraid of any of these corner or these wide receivers. Like Terry McLaurin is a fine player, but he's not the type, like, on a good team, and a good team, he's probably a 2, if not a 3, right?
Yep.
Like, he's that type of guy. I just think that you don't
the way
worry
that we
about
used to
him.
talk about Darnell Mooney.
Yes.
You know,
And Mooney's having
everybody but Claudio thought he was he was a 2 for the Bears because we were awful. You know what I mean? But on a really, really good team, he's slots in perfectly at number 3 and a guy that can give you number 1 snaps in a pinch. But he's not a guy that you're gonna build your wide receiver room around. There's no way.
no, and again, it's still not, it's no shame in saying this. I think Washington is going to be in a position, right, where they're going to have a franchise quarterback to build around.
Yeah.
But in what they did this offseason, because there weren't a lot of names available, the Eckler deal and that move was brilliant for them. I'm a massive fan of the way that they're using, because he's such a gifted skill set. They're using him very similarly to the way that we're using Swift, right? And a lot in the passing game, a bit in the run game, right? But it's tough, man. The reason you don't move Johnson around is because I have the utmost confidence in any of the other corners being able to match where he's going, whether Jaden Daniels is on the field or not. Jaden Daniels is the difference maker. It's not McLaren. And so, yeah, I wouldn't really worry about him at all moving around.
You got one more here. Patron member from Nova Scotia, love TTNL, only shows on YouTube I watch live. What do you think it will take for Caleb to stop all of the Jaden hype?
I think the Jaden hype is well deserved.
Yeah.
I think the problem with the hype has just become, because all of this is hot take season, right? You got to remember, once we come into football, it's everything is a hot take. And I always say hot takes are hot garbage, because what it means is, this is my hot take this week, and then next week something changes. Guess what? My hot take changes, but I don't sit down and say, here's where I was wrong about this player. And so all these people that, like, Orlovsky was sitting there in the early, right, saying the Bears messed up. Look, the way Jaden Daniels is playing, the Bears have messed up. And now he's coming around on Caleb. You're just not. And it's, again, the NFC needs an infusion of young quarterbacks. If Love and Hurts are the ones that were supposed to elevate, now they've fallen back. Best quarterback in the AFC is Jared Goff, or in the NFC is Jared Goff. Sam Darnold now has to be on the list for the way he's playing, but there aren't a lot of good quarterbacks in the NFC right now. So it's, I think what you'll end up seeing happen is the Jaden hype is going to be there, because the Washington fans are just as good as ours. They're a storied franchise. They've been around forever. They travel well. But
you know where it stops, Cars?
Where?
Win.
Oh,
that's where
at some point the story is going to go the way of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes, where
Mhm.
we can live in a world where all three of them are really good.
2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, the um for Caleb to win Rookie of the Year, it was like plus 650.
Yeah.
Right now, it's plus 150. So you see where it's
It
you see
doesn't
where it's
take
trending.
and you gotta look like a lot was made about that start, that first game for Caleb, and I get it. But you know what no one's talking about? Go watch Houston play Green Bay. CJ Stroud threw for 86 yards. 86 yards. Guess what? Was not a good day. And these things are going to happen. We're so quick to anoint these players, and then we're so slow to devaluate them when they start to fall off or when it's not the same level of play. CJ Stroud is still a franchise quarterback. Please don't get me wrong, but he does not look as good this year as he did last year at this point. There's no shame in saying that. It's these things are going to change week by week, and it's just going to be, to your point, Shane, the longer we keep winning, if we go out and put out a 10-7 season or a 9-8 season, even if we don't make the playoffs, and you just kind of keep seeing Caleb's play going up, and if he throws for like 3,700 yards and 28 touchdowns, you know what? That conversation is changed. And the Nate Tice article is part of that change for us.
Sure.
And so I don't really care who wins Rookie of the Year. I think it doesn't really matter. It's just like the Rookie of the Week thing. It was a joke. It's a joke.
Hey, Anthony Thomas beat LaDainian Tomlinson for Rookie of the Year in 2001. And what did it mean? Not a fucking thing.
It's kind of crazy, you know, like Kyler Murray won it in 2019. Kyler, great.
Yeah.
You know, Dak Prescott has won it. Todd Gurley has won it. Eddie Lacy has won it. RG3 won it the year that he got drafted over Andrew Luck. Who would you rather have?
Yeah.
So I don't really spend a whole lot of time worrying about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, I think it comes down to, fantasy football and, Madden and all that. People love all the glitz of all that. And if the Bears win and Caleb shows improvement, it's gonna put to rest a lot of things, and you're seeing it already.
The narrative has
For
already
6 weeks.
changed.
Yep, I agree.
And it's, is he in over his head until all of a sudden, like, look at what he's doing. And you know what? You know what I love the most about him? Is the dude is a hell of a leader. You know,
Yeah.
like he's out there, and I get it. Every good quarterback is a leader. Justin was a leader, right? But from every report that everybody was arguing why we couldn't draft him, the one that's the most fun to watch get proved wrong
Yep.
is that one.
Mhm.
Those players love him. Those players all are together. He is building that bond with everyone in that room. You win it.
Did you hear Cole Kmet when they asked him what makes him believe that this is
Quarterback.
sustainable?
The quarterback's pretty darn good.
Quarterback kind of says it all.
I mean, and again, I want to see us win. We should be no less than 6-3 here coming up soon, right? Ideally, we're 7-2. Things could happen. This is one of those trap games. I do worry that because we have had a problem on the defensive stopping the run, and Washington has done it so well, but it's also not going to be done as well because you've got Mariota in for Daniels, unless Daniels comes in, which Shane, I think we've talked about.
Yep.
no smart franchise would play Jaden this week, right? Like,
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's a lot of gamesmanship going on. You saw the Schefter tweet of they're gonna they're gonna try their best to get him out there on Friday in practice, and I guess what? I wouldn't be shocked to see him out there in practice participating in some extremely limited way just so they can keep that narrative out there. But if I'm a betting man, Cars, I don't expect to see Jaden Daniels on Sunday.
and you got to remember, part of this is you rushed him 16 times, 10 times, 12 times, 8 times, 11 times, 6 times. He was barely on the field in that Carolina game, and he rushed 3 times, and that's when he got hurt in one of those.
I picked him to get hurt by week 4. I wasn't off by that much. And I mean, I've seen a lot of Jaden Daniels in college. He's played a lot of football, as a fifth year guy, but his frame has always been the worry with me. The arm talent is there. The reading of
Massively.
the
You're correct.
defense and all of that. And I think that there's quite a bit of debate to be made there, but the frame has always been concerning to me because if you watch Jaden Daniels run, for as slight of frame as he is, he does not shy away from contact
Which
at
is why it's
all.
not shocking that it's his ribs that got hurt.
That's what I'm saying, and that's a big fucking problem. That's one of my favorite things about Caleb Williams, and you can look at it in his runs in London, especially. His vision is so great. He's looking, and he's like, "Yep, I don't need the extra 2 or 3 unless the game is on the line. I got the first down. I'm going to slide." And that was my thing with Justin. Sometimes Justin, he'd be like, "Dude, we don't need that there, man. We need you out there the next series. I don't need you dropping the fucking hammer on a guy. When you're my quarterback, get down, survive, go to the next set of downs."
And I think you're right. And I think I always would have wondered what Cam Newton would have been if they didn't allow him to take the beating that he did. Both the way that NFL allowed them to hit him, but also the way that Carolina continued to use his feet as more of a weapon. And you look at, and it's always these fucking defensive coordinator head coaches, right? It was Ron Rivera. It's now Dan Quinn. It's
Right.
what McDermott is doing in Buffalo. And, these Josh Allen and Cam are massively thicker than Jaden Daniels is, right? They're set up to do that a little bit better. I just think it's malpractice to keep allowing this kid to run and not saying you shouldn't. It's kind of like with Justin. You should have like 2 or 3 designed runs a game just to keep everybody on their feet and expecting it. But the second you're doing this 10, 12 times a game, it feels like you are inviting that injury. And if you're Washington, you've got all this hope and you bring him back in and then he gets destroyed this week on a hit and he's out for 4 weeks because of his ribs. And then, maybe it's a knee or something. Like you've built all of this hope in a short period of time with your new ownership group. Something bad happening to him would absolutely devastate that franchise and set them back.
Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I totally agree, and like I said, I'm as much as I would love to see him out there and the Bears go in there and beat them and go off of that momentum swing. If I'm putting some solid money down on if I expect to see him out there, I just don't, because I'm just bringing up their schedule now. So they have Chicago, then they're at New York, Pittsburgh, Philly, Dallas, Tennessee before they hit their bye week.
And let's not. There are some good defenses there,
Mm-hmm.
and some teams that will hit.
Yeah.
So like I'm not a big fan here of the Giants, even after their
Right.
trade, but Pittsburgh.
Yep.
Pittsburgh is a game I'd be terrified for him for.
Sure.
And then you follow that up with the Eagles, the Cowboys, and Titans. Like you come
Well,
back and it gets a little bit better, but
And cars don't. You can talk about the Giants. Let's not undersell. If you poll NFL players right now, and we've talked to quite a few, they hate playing in New York because of that turf, and that cannot be
Well-
undersold. And that's their game next week.
it's not set up great. You know what I mean? Like for them. And I don't know how Washington is going to match up between Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, and man, I really want Kayvon to be the guy that I hoped he would, but he's just inconsistent enough. Like this could be what he picks a game. He's like, this is the one that I'm going to go dominate and show what I can do, and then I'm going to take the next 4 or 5 off. But if you've got that looming and looking at that, you absolutely, if you're a smart football team, and again, most defensive coordinator head coaches are not smart when it comes to this type of planning. You're resting him so that you have a better chance to win the division and continue on down. And oh no.
Yeah, I didn't happen to see it, but I see they're on commercial break right now, but I have it on in the background. But yeah, and again, that I know it's a guy in the division. I hate to see it. No, I hated seeing Aiden Hutchinson go down. It's just bad for the NFL when you have young, talented players going down with any type of injury like that.
And it's hard because
it
Minnesota
sucks.
fans are really, compared to like Lions and Packers fans, most of the Vikings fans are pretty decent overall. They've had to deal with a lot. That Darisaw is quietly a great player.
He is walking, obviously with
all offensive linemen walk after an ace.
help, but yeah, I mean you can have a torn ligament and walk. I mean that's
They can have an offensive lineman could have a limb.
Craig Braggs is living proof, right? I mean he's like a offensive guard or backup long snapper or something.
An offensive lineman could have a limb hanging on by a thread would be fine. Like walking.
Well, you got
no, I mean that's really it. I think my expectation.
Give us your prediction.
So
and we need your prediction and your what is it? Your game score and your prediction for the game of something that's going to happen.
So I predict us to lose in London because previous Bears teams would break my heart that way. I'm celebrating that as a change overall to the franchise and the way that they're looking at this. I see the Bears. So again, there's not a single thing that Washington does well on defense. The guy they picked up from Carolina, Luvu, I think is what his name is, has been their best player.
Mm-hmm.
But they're the worst run. You can run all day if you choose, and then they'll load up to stop the run, and then you will just pass all day. And I don't expect Jaden Daniels to play. So I think the Bears are going to get off the field quite a bit. So I'm going to have the Bears 32 and the Washington Commanders 13.
Ooh, the old beat down in DC.
I do. Without Jaden, it's not a team that, and no Jonathan Allen, it's not a team that scares me. And I think if you looked at Baltimore, look, Lamar Jackson is fantastic, and Derrick Henry is fantastic, but I still don't fear anybody on that wide receiver room. I don't really fear the pass catchers all that much, and for them to go do that, and you look at what Cincinnati did with a terrible offensive line, and you look at what could happen. I just look at us putting up 400 yards of offense this week and really just blowing them out and doing that sort of as a statement. Yeah, I know Jaden didn't play, but I'm also going to go that this is another week for Caleb Williams where he's throwing 250 plus and 3 touchdowns.
How many to Rome?
2.
Do you want me to tell you Big Steve's bold prediction? He popped
boy.
into the show last night. He had a banger
Yeah.
as his bold prediction. Montez Sweat, the revenge game. 4 quarterback sacks.
That would be something. I mean,
Yeah.
the hard part for me is right now, and this is not a shame at Sweat, and I'm glad that he's getting this after a bye week.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, if he's not getting 4, it potentially would be Dexter and Billings tying for 4. You know what I mean? Like, I really look at them as just beating them up.
And I'm on I'm not saying that I don't think that the Bears can win. I do, but I've been burned so many times by this team, and I am in full blown. You go out and you show me that you're different. I believe that they are because of the quarterback.
We said that at London. Let's be honest too, right? We said, and I'm not telling you you're doing it wrong, but we said that at London, and then it happened, and it's like now I want to see it twice.
Yep. Well, this to me is a true, you know what I mean? You're going into somebody else's place. I mean, the London game was essentially obviously a Bears home game. I know you did have the travel involved, but like I said, I want to see a Matt Eberflus coach team, and I know that they've won off the bye under Eberflus at home. I want to see a Matt Eberflus coached football team come out prepared, ready to go on the road and beat a team that you are better than on the road in a big spot nationally when this hype train is starting to gain more and more momentum. Go out there and prove it to me. And that's why I picked Washington 24, Bears 21 until further notice. And I hope I'm wrong.
I can't blame you because in the Colts game still should be fresh in our minds, right? Because that is the game that they should have gone in and just dominated. And that was more on Waldron, but still, that is one that I'd want to see come back. So I completely understand. I'm just at the place now where that London game changed a lot for me as a statement, from being prepared.
And you're not used to them making the pivot cars in game. Like I said, we saw that first couple series, like, oh, here we've seen this before. We know what it is. It's going to be a barn burner against Jacksonville, and maybe
closer than it should be. Yep. And then you get to the end, and you're like, oh, hey,
fuck yeah, we were partying third quarter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We did the live watch party, but yeah, it's
six plays for 7 yards the first 2 drives.
Yeah.
And you saw Jacksonville do that 14 play.
Yep.
1. That game was not as close as it ended up being. But yeah, I think if the Bears get off to a better first quarter, and I think, again, this is a team that you can do things against. There's been a lot of early drive success. Baltimore did it, the other week. I think if you do that and you push them into a position where they have to pass,
right?
Even if Daniels is there, right? If they have to pass and you take away that run game from them, they're not a threat. They're not a come from behind team. They need a lead or to be super close. If you get up 2 or 2.5 scores, basically, they're done.
No, man, I hear you. The bye week is over. The Bears are back. And let it settle in, ladies and gentlemen. I said this to Ivan last night before Phil came in for the show. You know, we put in all our work on these quarterbacks, and you know, we obviously talk Cars, but we were all in total agreement. We all were ready. Nope, this is our dude. This is the guy that we believe in. This is the guy that we want this franchise tied to moving forward. Ryan Poles and Ian Cunningham and the Chicago Bears, they agreed with us, and football is back once again, and I'm ready. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. It's so much fun to be like excited to watch,
That's
and still keeping the TV on when we're on offense.
Yep. I'm ready. You're ready. That means we ready.